Hello YouTube, it's me Comrade here with my first video ever, and today I wanted to do a tutorial on how to launch vehicles in Battlefield 4. I know it's a 5-year-old game, but it's still very fun and there's still a lot of people playing it. And I've noticed a lot of people attempting to do vehicle launch and they just don't really do a good job at it because they just lack the information on how to do a successful launch. And I know there's a lot of vehicle launching tutorials on YouTube, but I feel like they leave out a lot of important factors, a lot of important information on how to make your launch successful. They just say, you know, hey, just put some C4 on the ground, put your vehicle over it and launch it. And well, that's the gist of it. It's not all of it. So I wanted to do a very in-depth video on what I call the art of the launch. And that's my goal for the end of this video, to help you guys master that. So let's get started. Now there's a few things that you need to know before you attempt any vehicle launch. You need to know that it requires explosives, a vehicle, and a teammate. And this is very important because I've seen a lot of people trying to launch themselves, and what ends up happening is they just end up blowing themselves up. So it has to be friendly fire. You either have to launch someone or have someone launch you. Now, you can go ahead and put your own explosives down, but you cannot be the one who detonates it if you're the one being launched. And same goes for the other guy. Also, you cannot do this in hardcore servers. What will end up happening is that you end up killing your teammate, or your teammate ends up killing you. Also, I've seen a lot of people try to get in the passenger seat with their friend and detonating the explosives. What ends up happening in that scenario is that they die, the vehicle explodes, and their teammate lives. You run the risk of getting banned from different servers. I certainly have been banned from different servers for launching vehicles, especially if the admin is playing and they see you wasting vehicles. They might just, ban you on the spot, so keep that in mind. Launch in very significant ways. Are you performing your vehicle launch on land? Are you performing your vehicle launch on water? Is the land that you are doing the launch on level? Are there any hills? Are there any ditches? Are there any structures around you that might get on the way of your trajectory? There's a lot of things that you need to account for and compensate for. You cannot undermine those things. Also, the vehicle type. Of course, the tank is heavier than a jeep, so it will require more explosives. If you are doing a launch on a water vehicle, say a boat or a rib boat, anything like that, jet ski, the way you place the explosives will also affect your trajectory, your launch. You're also limited to which explosives you can use on water vehicles. You're mostly going to be limited to C4. Now there's a way to circumvent that, and you can place some mines and slams, but I'll explain that later when I go into detail on how to launch water vehicles. But most of the time you're going to be limited to C4. So yeah, those are some factors that you need to account for. You cannot just overlook them. They will either make or break your launch. Now what I want to talk about next is the 3 different classes that you can use for launching vehicles. You have the support class, the recon class, and the engineer class. I'll give you some pros and cons for each one of them. Starting with the support class. The support class is by far the most popular that I've seen people use when launching vehicles, and by far the least effective one as well. Some of the pros include that you can deploy some C4, which is very useful. Another pro is that you can carry a ammo box, and while you might believe that you have unlimited C4, which is technically true, the downside to it, and this is a con, is that you are only limited to working with 3 at a time. So your 4th will replace your first one, your 5th one will replace your second one, and your 6th one will replace your 3rd one. So you are only limited to working with 3. Another pro is that that you can detonate them at will. You don't have to rely on someone else to detonate them. You can blow them up whenever you're ready. Another con for it is that if you die and you have placed your C4 will disappear like so. So you're gonna have to redo your entire setup. Another con is that you have to deploy on someone that's nearby your launching area or an objective that's nearby your launching area, which brings me to the recon class. The recon class, similar to the support class, can have 3 C4, but unlike the recon class, it is not limited to where you can spawn. You can equip your spawn beacon and you can spawn near your launching area. Also, with the right setup, with the right field upgrades, which I'll explain about in detail later, you can deploy up to 6 C4 at a time. So that's another pro. It has more. It can have more C4 than the support class. Similar to the support class, however, if you die, your C4 will disappear. Another pro, like the support class, is that you can detonate them at will, which brings me to my next one, the engineer class. Now the engineer class is very useful, but it relies a lot on other classes. So one of the pros is that you can deploy up to 6 mines and 6 slams at a time with the right setup. Again, I'll explain that later. Right now I'm only able to work with 3 at a time, but I'll show you how you can deploy 6 of each. And one of the pros of it is that if you die, your explosives do not disappear. They stay in place until they are detonated. Another con for it is, like I said, it depends on other classes to detonate those explosives. You can go ahead and use a grenade sometimes, or a rocket, but then you have to sacrifice. If you're doing the rocket, you have to sacrifice either equipping the slams or the mines. Now with the grenade, I have smoke grenades right now, but you can also just throw a grenade down. If say there's a vehicle on top, you just duck down or go prone and throw a grenade on them, and the explosion will trigger the detonation. So and similar to the support class, you are limited to where you can spawn. So those are the 3 different classes that you can use. There are pros and cons, and I'll show you right now how you can equip 6 C4 on the recon class and 6 mines and 6 lamps on the engineer class. Okay, so what I'm gonna talk about next is field upgrades. This is how you can equip the 6 C4 with the recon class and 6 mines and 6 lamps with the engineer class. And the way you do it is go to your setup, you go all the way down, and just before your camouflage, it's gonna say field upgrades. Now when you click there for your engineer class, you want to go to the one that says anti-tank. If you see at level 3, it increases your maximum deployed explosives to 6. So that's what's going to allow you to deploy 6 mines and 6 slams. You're gonna click on that. Your support class does not have anything that can increase the amount of C4 that it can use. That is why this the recon class is better than the support class when doing launches. If you go down to your field upgrades, you'll find that the Spec Ops at level 2 will increase your maximum inventory of C4 to 6. So you're gonna have 64. So you go ahead and equip that. Now the catch to it is that you have to earn them. You don't just automatically get them. So the way you earn them is by either following commands, playing the objectives, and or if you are the squad leader, giving commands and having your squad completing the objectives and getting some kills. So this is a sort of like a fast way to getting them. If you deploy on a friendly vehicle and you rack up some kills, it would really help out on the time that it takes for you to earn those points. Catch to that is that it has to be a squad mate. It can't just be a teammate. It has to be someone in your squad. I'll go ahead and try and rack up some points right now. I'll see you back once I have them. To rack up enough points with the attack chopper, and but unfortunately I lost a video on how we acquired them. But if you look at the top of the bottom left corner where our names are, you can see a green bar, and that is your field upgrades bar, and that's how you can read your progress and see how many points you need. And so as you can see, now I am able to deploy 6 mines and 6 lamps with my engineer class. And if I redeploy, they do not disappear, they stay in place. Now go ahead and spawn back on my friend Astro and place some C4 with my recon class. And now you can see that I have a total of 18 explosives. And if you think about it, that is 3 more explosives than an entire squad full of support classes. Now one thing that you need to know about your field upgrades is that once you earn them, they would carry over to the next map if you stay within the same server. But if you leave the server for any reason, you will lose them, so you will have to earn them again. Okay, what I want to talk about next is the placement and arrangement of your explosives. Now this might sound trivial, but it's actually very important. First you have to learn how to place your explosives. Again, this might seem trivial, but they just have their little quirks that if you don't know how to work around them, they start misbehaving and you might get frustrated. So if you see a lot of people, what they do is they just start placing them in one spot, and as you can see, they just start misbehaving. They're not being placed where I want them to. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that this 18 mines have a pretty large diameter compared to other explosives, and they want their own space. So if you think of this white dot that's moving along my screen as the center of your explosive, you can pretty much estimate the diameter. And as you can see, they start behaving the way I want them to. Another thing is that there are sort of limitations of how far you can place them. So let's say I was over here. I know my dot, like the center of my explosive, is where I want it to be, but if I do that, it just drops right here. So also keep an eye on how far you are from your explosives. Try to be as close as possible so that you can place them where you want them to and they don't misbehave. Now let me talk about arrangement. let's say I wanted to launch something towards Foxtrot. Now, does this resemble anything? It sort of looks like the tip of an arrow, right? Well, that's exactly what I call it, the arrow arrangement. Because that will give you more of a directional launch than anything else. And the slams, they're not so picky about space or placement. You can just place the slams anywhere and they'll stack up pretty nicely in comparison to the mines. And again, you can just go ahead and redeploy, come back with your and then you have a bigger detonation that will give you more liftoff. But let's say that I didn't really care so much for direction. Let's say that I wanted to just launch straight up in the sky. Now for that, I would want to cover more surface area under my vehicle. And for that, I would just start placing my explosives sort of like in rows, so to give me that surface area coverage. As you can see, there's more coverage than the triangle that I made earlier. And if you go ahead and redeploy, come back with some C4, you can also cover more area. However, here's something to keep in mind. When you put your C4, one thing that screws up a lot of people is that they'll just start doing this, or doing this. Now if I do that and then I get my vehicle on top, what will end up happening is that yes, every single one of them will detonate, but since the ones that I'm detonating are the C4 first, because that's the one I got the trigger for. I'm sorry, there was a little problem with the video, but as I was saying, it will give you more of a slanted takeoff than anything, because the explosion would start from right to left. That's how it would start going. So if you place your vehicle, let's say like this, it will launch your vehicle, and your vehicle will actually move towards the left. Let's say it was like this. Now what would happen is that since the explosion would start on the front, it would launch it backwards, and vice versa. If the explosion was on the back, it would launch you forward. So keep in mind those game physics. And so what I would recommend, if you wanted a vertical takeoff, is to even out the spread of your C4. Now another thing that I want to talk about is, like I mentioned, your terrain is a factor. So let's say that this was like, where you were going to launch. So if you did it on top of the hill, well, you see the mine behaves quite well and it stays on top. But let's say that you did it more towards the side. You see it's starting to sort of glitch out. But if you did it more towards this side, then it just slides down. See how that slides down? So like I said, it's a pretty big factor that can either make or break your launch. So you always want to keep that in mind. Keep the game physics in mind. Now another thing that you guys should look out for when using mines and slams to set up your launch area is that you guys need to make sure that when you place your vehicle on top of them, it should come to a complete halt. If you are placing your vehicle on top of your explosives, on top of your mines and slams, and you don't come to a complete halt, the explosives will go off, because that's just the way they work. They work by exploding upon contact or just detecting movement. So you gotta make sure that your vehicle comes to a complete halt, otherwise you will die, as you saw, and of course your launch setup will be ruined. Now, if you made it all the way to this point in the video, I want to go ahead and thank you for your patience. I know I've been going over a lot of information that might seem trivial or just common sense to some of you guys, but you know, thank you for bearing with me, and I will go ahead and start demonstrating some of the vehicle launches that I've been speaking of, so thank you. Alright, so we're gonna launch a tank for now. Now, tanks will require more explosives than, say, AMRAPs or Jeeps or quad bikes or dirt bikes. Alright, Astro. Now, Astro is one of the few people that I trust when launching vehicles, because he also knows just as much as I do. Alright, I have placed the explosives, C4. If you want, you can go get your C4. Yep. Alright, so like I said, since they require a lot of explosives, both me and Astro are gonna place our mines and our C4 down. Just detonate them. Just detonate them. The frag doesn't really add that much to the launch. Now wait a second. I'll let you know when. It's just that there's a little bit of a slant in here, so I gotta compensate for that. All right, we're ready. And there we go. Similar to the tank, all ground vehicles will pretty much launch the same, just depends on how many explosives you put and how many explosives they require, but we'll show you launch with the now the MRAP, since it's lighter, doesn't require that much or that many explosives, so I'll be the only one placing the explosives, and then I'll let Astro drive over them. Alright, go ahead, Astro. Now do try to compensate for the slant, sort of like there's a little slant on this hill. Drive a little bit forward, 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 more forward. A little bit more. There we go. And this guy wants to get in? Okay. And there he goes. Now, something that I forgot to mention, but that I really do want you guys to know, is that the LAV, the BTR, and the mobile AA will launch pretty much the same as you would launch a tank. However, when you launch them into the water, there's this glitch where they will bounce off. There's what I call the water jumps, which you intentionally launch in one of those three vehicles into the water, and then they would bounce really high up in the air. And I might do a separate video on that, because it doesn't really always work out. Sometimes it just kicks you out of the vehicle, and sometimes it just doesn't really work. So I'll do a separate video on that. Alright guys, so right now I'm gonna demonstrate how to launch water vehicles. So what you want to do is that you want to dive under the water to place your C4 under the vehicle. And most of the time you're gonna be limited to using C4 on water vehicles because you can't place mines under the vehicle. So you dive under the water, and make sure that before you do though, you have your C4 ready to be placed. So you dive under the water, you go under the vehicle, and then you start placing them. Now if you see, I'm placing all of them right under the center. And make sure that you come up for air, otherwise you're gonna die. And what that will do is pretty much a vertical launch. Now there was some trajectory there, but it wasn't that much. Now let me show you how you can get more distance. Alright, so if you wanted more distance than vertical height, you go ahead and place your C4 sort of like on the back. And that way you'll launch it further. But let's say that I placed my explosives down under it, and then you start driving, or your teammates start driving, and you detonate them before he comes to a complete halt. What ends up happening is that there was a tiny little bit of a lift off, but it wasn't as much as the two previous ones. So like I said, be sure that you come to a complete halt. Alright, so now we'll demonstrate how you can go further and higher. Alright, go ahead and jump back in it so that I can get a frame of reference. Alright, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Now you see that's a total of 12 C4. 6 for Master, 6 for me. And you can see that makes a huge difference. Okay, so Astro had to go, so I'm all by myself again. But we were able to find out that you can place slams on the back of your water vehicle, be it a jet ski or a boat. And so yes, you can place slams on them. That's actually something that I just found out today. However, we did find out that they are very unreliable. And what I mean is that we went ahead and placed some C4 on the back, that way they would explode. However, not all of them explode. Some of them do, some of them don't. I still don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know what causes that to happen. So the idea was to have more explosives on the bottom for a vertical liftoff, and more explosives on the back for travel distance. We just couldn't get all of the slams to behave the way we want them to. They are very unreliable. You can go ahead and use them for your own vehicle launches, but I wouldn't recommend them. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you how to circumvent the fact that you can't place mines under your boat. The idea is to place your mines and your slams on shallow water. Unfortunately, I don't have someone like Astro to help me launch a vehicle, but I can still go ahead and demonstrate how to do the setup. So as you can see, I'm able to walk around this area, and the basic idea is just to place your mines and your slams. and you can redeploy, and then you can just come back with your C4, place it on them, and drive your boat on top of it. Now I usually do this when we're trying to launch like an attack boat. This is the rib boat. I can easily launch the rib boat just using C4, but since the attack boat is being used right now, I'll use this instead to demonstrate. Now again, be careful when pulling up close to this setup. You don't want to detonate them when you don't want them to, right? And the idea is to just pull up right on top of them. And the attack boat requires a lot. It is one of the heaviest vehicles to launch, and it requires a lot of explosives, but this is the basic idea. That's how you would set up your launch, and that's a way you can increase the amount of explosives that can help your launch. So this is what you want to always come to a complete halt. And now let's talk about air vehicles, helicopter, jets, all of that stuff. Okay, let me just tell you right now that you're gonna have a hard time trying to launch these things, and even if you do get them up in the air, you're gonna be very disappointed. One, they just their game mechanics are meant to be, you know, on the air flying, so once you get them up there, they're just gonna start behaving like they normally do. Nothing special there. And two, it's just you're just gonna have a hard time doing so. So what you can do is go ahead and place your explosives down on the ground first, and then try to land your helicopter or your jet on top of them. But you're just gonna have a hard time. I'm a pretty decent pilot, and even then I'm still having a hard time trying to land these things. And even when you do get them to land, you know, perfectly fine, you also run the risk of you know, exploding once you get out. Let's say that you were coming in like you know, like this, and then you know, you get out, and like I said, if you don't come to a complete halt, this happens. This always happens. So the easier way to do it is to go ahead and get under them when they're parked, and then just placing your explosives down under them, and then that's pretty much it. That's the easy way to do it. Now let me tell you, if you're gonna launch one, make sure that there is no pilot. You can have a gunner, you can have a passenger, just no pilot, because when there's a pilot, you know how this thing keeps spinning. That's what's gonna cause the sort of not so fun thing to happen. It's just gonna go in the air, and it's just gonna start swinging around, and whoever's piloting it's just gonna lose control and probably gonna crash it. However, if you just have a gunner, you see how they're not spinning right now? Well, they are, but they're stopping, and that's it. What's gonna happen then is that you're gonna be able to launch them, and then they're just gonna start going into the air, and it's gonna look something like this. Like when you parachute off of your chopper, it's just gonna look like that. It's just gonna look like that. They're just gonna go up in the air and then just fall very slowly like that. However, you're just going to be an easy target for whoever has an RPG or a Stinger or even a tank. You know, just you're just gonna be falling very slowly, and you're gonna be an easy target. Now for jets, same thing. Make sure that you sort of land them first. And you see this sort of awkward tilted motion that's doing right now? That's pretty much what it's going to look like when you launch it. Because of course you can't launch this thing without a pilot on the seat. This is just a one-person vehicle, so that's all it's pretty much gonna do, is just sort of tilt to the side and sort of you know, run off and probably crash with the ground, or if you're on the carrier, it's just gonna crash with the island. And so you're gonna be extremely lucky if you actually get it up in the air. But one of two things is gonna happen. Either your pilot is gonna crash it because he's gonna lose control, or he's just going to stall in the air, like sort of like this. He's just going to stall up in the air like that, and again, he's gonna be an easy target for whoever has an RPG or a tank or even another jet or a chopper. He's just gonna stall like that up in the air. He'll be very lucky if he can get it going and then, you know, start flying around. But you know, if you were just gonna fly around the jet, then why even launch it? You can just do that as you spawn. Alright guys, so I think we have reached the end. I have covered everything that I wanted to cover. I don't think there's anything left for me to show you guys. I want to go ahead and thank those of you who stayed all the way to the end. I know I went through a lot of information and it might have been boring, so thank you. I also want to go ahead and apologize for the low quality of the video. It's my first time making any videos, so I made a lot of mistakes. I know the video is gonna be kind of choppy, and I apologize for that. If I do make any more videos, I promise they'll be better. Anyways, I hope you guys found this video useful. Those of you who have asked me if I could teach you how to get tanks on top of the buildings, or how to get, you know, all those explosives. And hey, if you ever do get banned from any server for launching vehicles, then you can always come to my server. It's called Anthrax. I have it as no rules. You can do whatever the hell you want. Go nuts, man. And yeah, you let me know if you guys want to watch some trolls or tutorials, or just me and my friends having fun, just screwing around. Now, I don't make any promises. My goal was to make a vehicle launching tutorial, since I've gotten a lot of questions about it. I've gotten a lot of messages. Well, if this helped you, then mission accomplished. Alright, I guess there's nothing else to talk about for now, so I'll see you guys on the battlefield.